high performance leaves, the story on those exit forms is usually better opportunity, better pay, or personal reason. But really, if you sit with them off the record, you hear a very, very, very different story. High performers rarely leave because work is hard. They leave because the environment makes excellence feel pointless. They leave when the standard they signed up for gets really quietly lowered and no one protects it.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another podcast episode here at the Rabasha family. We have the one and only Annastacia Wainaina, keynote speaker, culture strategist for CEOs, powerful in all different types of industries. We've seen her in the healthcare and people-heavy organizations, turning belonging into measurable retention, trust, and performance. She's also the host of the Human Edge podcast. She's been working with high leaders and organizations who know culture is not just a nice to have, but a hard business level that decides whether they retain top talent, accelerate, and stay ahead. She was raised in the village of Kenya where identity was held in community and everyone had a place. She now brings that lived understanding of belonging into boardrooms, executive offsites, and high-stakes transformations in Australia and beyond. She's been translating culture into strategy, turning abstract concepts like engagement and inclusion into decisions, behaviors, and rhythms that actually move a P&L with risk and delivery. So today's episode, talking with Annastacia Wainaina, seeing the work that we do with companies and seeing what's happening in the marketplace. One thing I've really noticed is employee retention. My goodness, you even go on Seek and you see there is more jobs here in Australia than people. Hey, it's actually really hard not to have a job. I'd be really surprised. Why? Because companies are recruiting because they need people. They need more people now more than ever. I know people keep complaining about AI. Yes, it will replace the incompetent. It will replace the average incompetent. But still, people will always need people. And jobs are struggling right now to keep people. Are people motivated? Do young people want to work in the industry? Keeping high staff. So, to be able to come and talk with you on that is quite powerful. We have a few questions from a few CEOs who sent in their questions beforehand. Right, these are CEOs and Annastacia Wainaina who are leading companies from 11 all the way to 1,000 employees, from 1 million of revenue to hundreds of millions of revenues, right? So those ones, retention and the staff is very important. Your people is quite important. So we do have a few questions. So what are your thoughts a little bit about that, what I just said in regards to people and the job market and what's happening in the world right now? And then we can go off into the questions. Marketing is all about storytelling. Dad, when we first started this business, what did you say to me?
I said, yes, we do a podcast.
Why?
Because I want to tell our story.
Why?
Because I know the story builds a legacy.
Builds a legacy. And that is exactly what we do here at ETS Rabasha Media. We market your story on social media so you could build a legacy for those who come after you, to build your business and your personal brand.
Yeah, follow us on our platform. Go on our website, etsrabashamedia.com.
This is about legacy, and it is about showing up on social media every single day, because if you don't show up, your competition will. Look, retention is really important. I think sometimes we just look at it as just keeping people, but it's quite a process. It takes a lot when your door is quite the turnover, it's quite a lot. And yeah, you talk about AI, and we cannot have a conversation today without talking about AI. But as just you highlighted there, that AI will replace the incompetent. For people who are very sure about what they do, it will be a complementary thing to have. And yeah, some jobs will go. And the job of CEOs is to be visionaries and to see that coming and to learn the trends and to be prepared and to know where we sit and all that. And we're just at the beginning of it, but it's not really the beginning. AI has been here for quite some time. It's just that now we are starting to really talk about it and the impact of it. As they're saying, in the next 2-5 years, we won't even recognize the job market. So yeah, quite a timely conversation to have right now. Thank you for having me. No worries. Let's get into it. And, it is big, like your work is a lot quite on affecting that P&L. So that's quite powerful. So the first question that we have from one of our CEOs who submitted these questions before I had you on the show: why do you think high performing employees really leave companies? As leaders, how often is it our fault? That is the question we.
So when high performers leaves, the story on those exit forms is, if ever there's an exit interview or an exit form, is usually better opportunity, better pay, or personal reason. But really, if you sit with them off the record, you hear a very, very, very different story. High performers rarely leave because work is hard. They leave because the environment makes excellence feel pointless. They leave when the standard they signed up for gets really quietly lowered and no one protects it. They're carrying the underperformers with no real accountability. So their reward of being really good and performing really well is more work. They raise issues that are really never addressed. They go unaddressed and nothing really changes. So their voice stops really mattering. They don't feel seen, or they feel stretched, or they don't feel developed. They hit the ceiling and no one really is talking about what next. So how often is that a leadership issue? More often than we like to actually really admit. So you cannot really separate leadership from culture. If the manager doesn't protect the standard, doesn't advocate for their people, doesn't really create psychological safety, your best people will leave. Be the first to walk away because they know that they have options. It's always the good people that leave first when the environment is toxic. So high performers don't quit jobs. They quit lowered standard, the silence and the lack of protection around what good was supposed to really look like, what was promised, what stands in those values and mission and where we are going. That's why they leave.
How much money do you think they lose when they leave a really good performing staff member like you just talked about?
Really, retention costs a lot of money to retain, to recruit, to keep recruiting. From research, it says half to sometimes double the cost of their salary. So that will look like as simple as, if somebody is on 120, it's costing somewhere between 50 and 200 to let that person go. So it's not something that we can just ignore. Yeah, and that is just to really conservatively don't talk about it. We really underestimate how massive this is. So as I said, just as an example, and that is before you consider lost client, damaged reputation, or the message it sends to people who are staying. And now, if you zoom out, you're cycling through people every year. That is not an one-off expense. It's permanent turnover task on your business. For most organizations, chronic turnover quite eats into 10 to 20% of their potential profit. You can have great product and still bleed financially because you can't keep the people who make the product work. So turnover isn't just a people problem, it is a P&L problem. You're paying a hidden cost, attacks every time a good person walks out of the organization. Again, people sometimes don't sit to talk about it, but it is quite huge. And there is time for people to leave, and we can talk about that. But really, if the turnover is you're losing people who are valuable, you need to stop and think about it.
Very, very powerful stuff when you come to think about it, and how it affects, like you said, the P&L. And so the second question that we have is, if retention is a leadership problem, like you just mentioned there, right? And I get it. Imagine being a business owner, having to train and you're spending all this money training people, and then so it's so valuable. If it is a leadership problem, as you just mentioned there, what systems or culture shifts actually move the needle? Like, what actually works? Can you give us an example, not just perks or bonuses or money?
Perks are very easy. Systems are harder, and that's where real leverage sits. And there are 4 big levers that I want to talk about that actually shift retention. Leaders' capability. Leadership comes in again. Leaders' capability. If your leadership, your manager, they are literally your first system. And if they don't know how to really have honest, courageous conversations, coach performance, or show basic emotional intelligence, no pack will compensate for that. Equip your leaders or you will bleed tarring. The second lever is real growth path. High performers need to see a future. No vagueness, like you've got potential or we will work on it, but clear progression. Stretch assignment, mentoring. If people can't see themselves growing with you, they will grow without you. Belonging by design. And this is where I live, I sit, I sing, I breathe, everything. Belonging doesn't just happen by accident. It looks like regular one-on-one, teams check-in, listening spaces where people tell the truth without really, repercussion because I spoke up. And leaders who close the loop. We had this, here is what we're going to do about it, not just sweep it under the carpet. Fourth lever, I talked about 4 levers. The fourth lever is fairness and accountability. Nothing pushes high performers out faster than tolerated mediocrity. Yeah, when low and toxic performance is ignored, your best people quietly update their CV, they clear the standards, plus consistency or follow through is a culture, not a memo. It's really not a memo. It's not something we write in memos. It's a follow through. It's something we have to sit with our people and really talk about what's going on. If your retention strategy starts with perks, you're trying to really patch a leadership problem with a lifestyle benefit, and it won't work.
Where do you think people get it wrong in regards to the system? Like, what type of system is that? Is it like, having a leadership meeting every day, for example? I read in Vern Harnish's book, Scaling Up, he talks about having a morning huddle every day. We have a morning huddle as a team, for example, from the CEO all the way down. What actually, the system, is it the positive? I noticed when you go to a lot of jobs, like sometimes employers seem to have this kind of, it's always led by fear. It's always led by fear. It's never by encouragement. It's never, if we come in and it's like, okay, you did this very well. You did this very well. You could do this, but you know what I mean? It's always kind of led by fear. So, yeah, just what are kind of the loops in the systems that you feel that they can, companies can put together to help the system grow for that retention?
Check-ins, and every organization will be different. Mostly spending some time in healthcare or people really like heavy people organization. The one-on-ones check-ins are really important, but also the huddles, because communication. When there's no clear communication, being very clear on what roles and responsibilities are, who does what. And the minute I walk into organization and I hear that's not my job, I know we have a problem. And you've talked about fear-led, because managers think and there is time to manage people. There is time to actually really manage people. It's like this, we're going to do it, but you need to talk to your people. They need to understand. So it is the way things are structured. It's what's the culture. So systems, again, when you look at, for example, the aviation industry, which is quite safe. And if you've flown enough, you realize when you get on a flight, they do it almost the same every single time, because there's a process and it's very clear. This is how we do it. There are some sectors you can't afford to do that because everybody is different and you need to handle and manage people very, very, very differently. Yeah. So it's really the hurdles for communication, systems in place for what does your culture look like, and really being very clear on this is our culture, and we really actually employ, recruit, and everything through this. How do we make decisions? So your decision-making framework is very clear to your people. So that whether it's the janitor, whether it's the CEO, people are very clear on how do we make decisions here. Not through fear, how do we make decisions here? You have to let people take risks if you're going to innovate. So when people make mistake, that they're not, you actually get curious. I'm curious why you did that. I'm curious to learn. And then you coach them. You coach performance. But if then you're coaching, maybe you have a misalignment in your hire. And then when do you really start letting people go? The one key thing of any leadership is decision making. The longer you delay that decision making, whether it's hiring and firing, my coach would say you hire people faster than you recruited them, because it can cost you a lot. But that looks like you have systems to support people along the way, so people are not hearing in their catch-ups, their performance catch-up is the first time they're hearing that there's been an issue. If an issue occurs, circle back with people, sit back with people, talk to them, tell them what you didn't like. Be that leader that is leading by example, that you coach performers. So when you ask what systems, to me, we're very clear on our culture, we are very clear on our values, we're very clear on our decision-making framework, we're very clear on roles and responsibility, and we're very clear on expectations.
Wow. I love the way you broke it down, and it's clear to see why this is so valuable. As a business owner, it's clear to see why this conversation is extremely valuable for one to understand, because those systems, like you said, they're everything, and that's what keeps people in the long term. So the next question that we have is, and you did mention a little bit earlier, but how do you balance really high standards also while creating an environment where people don't feel maybe pressured and don't want to leave? Because A players attract A players, so potential A players may like that, right? Like that type of environment where it's really high standard, but not everyone can potentially keep up at that level. And like we said, there is A players, but then in every company, especially the ones where you have up to 1,000 employees, you're going to have some B players, going to have some C players, but you have a great system. So how do you balance that? Setting high standards, but also maintaining and not, I guess, maybe you could say, not overworking people, but keeping, maybe not the A players to succeed.
And your focus as a leader is your A players, and then you expect your A players to be able to look after your Bs and your Cs. I don't see high standard and belonging as opposites. To me, high performers actually crave for both. And I use a very simple framework. It's clarity, support, and care. What does clarity mean? People know exactly what great look like. The expectations are quite explicit, not assumed, not guessing, nor moving goalposts. You're very clear. Then support. You don't just demand result, you give people the resources. You accept feedback and coaching to get there. Here is the bar, and I'm here to help you reach it. And this is the system in the process of how you can get there. And along the way, we will talk and see what is it that you need. Care, that you remember people are human. They're human. You respect their time. You really protect them from chaos where you can, and acknowledge effort as well as outcome. So, learning through excellence. When somebody does something really good, that you actually say, okay, this is what you really did well. Here is where we are struggling. How can we learn from this that you're doing really well and be able to bridge this thing? Sometimes it's understanding the players that you have and really putting them in areas that they thrive. Sometimes it may look like, with an honest conversation, is saying you're really good at this, but we want to build you here. So here is how we can support you. So when those three are present, you get environment where people say, I'm stretched, but I'm not abused. I'm accountable, but I'm not alone. I'm expected to deliver, but I'm respected as a human. And that's where high standard and low turnover happily coexist. So you can say, this is the standard and I'll support you to meet it. And that is very different from just work hard. Just get it. That's how we just do it. Yeah. I'm a very big advocate of sitting down with your people and coming up to what are the silly things that we do in this organization. Actually, I have an article out there in Substract about this Lent period, where I thought the businesses could also take a Lent moment where you just actually sit down with your people and think, what are the silly things that we do in this organization, where we just do it, and people keep, they make you non-effective, non-efficient. Then you start getting rid of them. People feel heard, they feel that they contributed, and you get performance.
Wow. And I did read your article about that concept of Lent with businesses, and it was quite intriguing. So it was really cool to see you bring that up. The next question, we've got two questions, but I like this other question, so I want to ask this one. The companies that have employees that are there for 8, 10, 12 years, what do they do extremely well compared to the others?
And I think that, again, that is learning to really give the people what they need. Yeah, the vision is still very valid. People understand where we're still going, and so they trust you. Trust is huge. Yeah, they know we have a journey, they know where they're going. Then there's trust. Where are we? I can trust this visionary to take me to where I'm wanting to go. You give them a reason and a purpose to come to work every single time, that they're very clear on the DNA of the organization. Why do we exist as an organization? And they see themselves as valuable members of that, not just a number, but But actually what I do here, yes, I may come in as a janitor, but as a janitor of this organization, this is what we are all about. And this is why my work is so valuable in here. And that what keep people going. Sometimes longevity is not always good. You have to push your people. You have to keep them growing. If they're staying and they're not growing, it's just somebody spent 30 years here, 30 years have they grown, or 30 years doing the same thing, and so now it's mundane. I don't have to think about it. I can just show up and do it with my eyes closed. It's closer to home, whatever. That's the reason they stay, because change becomes so hard for those people, and they're the people actually that start to become toxic. So there is a place and time for people to actually move on. But turnover sometimes can happen when you become very clear on expectation and value. This is our expectation, this is our value, and we hold you accountable to this every single year, every single time we're having this conversation, that we can still see you going with us where we are going. We can see that you're still growing. Yeah. So that decision framework, I cannot speak highly of your values and your people knowing why we exist. These are our values, and making sure that people are growing. They're just not existing, that they thrive.
Yeah. Do you think value should be like, I know we live in a place that's remote, and we have remote work, but that's something that should be displayed all throughout the company?
Absolutely. People should understand. It is really key for people to understand why do we exist? What is our vision? What is the DNA of this organization? What are our values? Because our values guides our decision-making framework.
Wow. Powerful stuff. And as it is like it's Sunday here in Australia. I know people are seeing places in different locations, but I think to have this type of conversation, ahead of an event we are doing together, really around such a powerful topic, that people can come in, especially CEOs can come and learn from. The last question that we do have is, on a revenue perspective, when you look at the economic side of things, for all these big companies, when they have really bad turnover rates, I know we did have a similar question like this, but more around, give us an example of how much a company loses on revenue with staff consistently, them having to fix that issue, training and all of those things. Because that's a very good question, I feel, because that's a lot of the pain that people have, is just like, you have visions and ideas and you want to build a business, but you can't do it without people. So for the P&L, can we make this realistic for people? What does that look like when someone who's even listening to this understands this process and understands where they need to get to because it's costing them? What would you say that would be?
As I said, conservatively, it costs you between half and double the cost of that person's annual salary. So again, I'll just use the example I said, that if the person their pay is 120,000, the cost of that turnover could be somewhere between 50 to 200, because you have to include the cost of the training and advertising for the job role, the impact it have on other people, your reputation, all these things, the people that might actually end up walking away because this person has left. There's so much that comes with turnover. And if it's just one-off person, that's okay. But if you're consistently doing this, imagine the money that it's costing you. 10 to 20% of business profitability sometimes can go to their turnover.
Wow. Yeah. There you go. Very powerful when you come to think about it. I really want to thank you again just to have these short conversations. I think it's just so valuable to be able to capture that value here and there. So where can people find you? And is this how you work with the company? How do you help them work that? What does that look like?
Yeah, I work with companies at a different capacity, whether that is coaching or one-on-one for your leadership, or whether that is group coaching for your leadership, or whether that is really coming in and looking at the culture and us unpacking what would good look like, and really then supporting your people to come to the journey. So we work at different, but you can reach out on the socials, Annastacia at AnastasiaWainaina.com. And somebody will get back to you. But really, if this conversation has been really impactful, This is exactly why I created Belonging by Design. It is to help leaders move from "we care about culture" as really a slogan to belonging as a system, where really high standards, retention, and humanity live in the same room. This is why we are having the conversation on the 31st of March. So if you're a CEO, you're a HR, you're an executive listening to this conversation and it has touched you in one way or the other, or actually you work in an organization where you're thinking this would be important, be there, because there will be much more.
Yeah, powerful. Thank you so much for that. And you guys will be able to, if you're on YouTube, the link in the description, and LinkedIn, you can connect with Njeri Wainaina. And again, we will be having our event that will be published and you guys can register for your ticket. So I want to thank you. I will see you next week where leaders can come in and tune into this magic that you had to share with us today.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks. Bye. Hey, what's wrong? Bro, I'm stressed out. I'm running my business. I've got to serve my customers, but I need more customers coming in. I can't keep relying on word of mouth. Why don't you just use ETS Rabasha Media? Who? Well, with AI now, what they do is they go in, get your perfect clients, bring them in front of you. So all I got to do is run my business and he brings me opportunities. Think about it. You speak to 3,000 of your ideal customers, convert 1% of that 3,000. That's 30 people. 30 people in a room with you. Can you convert that? Of course I'll close them. I'm good at what I do. I just don't have time to be going and looking for my perfect client. Focus on what you love doing and let them bring you customers. When you win, they win, commission, ching. Sujira Rabasha, huh? Yeah, Sujira Rabasha. Go and Google them, man. Come on, take it to the bank.
If you really enjoyed this video, make sure to click here, and I'm sure you're going to love that one.